Hi everyone, my name's Miss Gautama and I'm here to make revision videos for the GCSE Citizenship course AQA Examining Board, although a lot of the content will be covered across a range of examining boards. The purpose of these videos is to ensure that you have short, snappy revision videos that takes me the same time to finish a cup of tea. So, please do just subscribe, like videos, leave comments on what sort of topics you want me to create revision videos for. I'm not going to create revision videos for the entire course, but only the areas that people feel they need to work on. So I did get a request about the structure of paper 1 and paper 2. So this applies to those who are studying the AQA course. So that's what we're going to be doing. Cheers. So, let's begin. So, paper 1 looks like that. And it begins with section A. And section A is the active citizenship part. Questions 1.1 to 1.5 are basically 1 and 2 mark questions, and they ask you questions like, what do we mean by the term charities? What is a pressure group? What is boycotting? All those different types of actions one might take to effect a change. What's a petition? What's a demonstration? All that. So that's question 1.1 to 1.5. And then it moves on to question 1.6, where there is a source. And an 8-mark question. Now, this is the only 8-mark question across 2 papers that will ever have a source. So please do refer to the source in your answer. And usually the source provides a case study of an organisation, like a pressure group, a non-governmental organisation, a charity, a voluntary group, or even an individual person. And it outlines how successful their campaign has been or the type of methods they use to affect change. So you should really know what the factors are of a successful campaign. So you should be thinking about the types of methods and actions that are used, whether there's high profile people involved in the campaign or celebrity support, the status of the organisation, the importance of the issue, funding, media support, whether there's support of, whether the group has insider or outsider status, and so on. And what you're expected to do for that 8-mark question is also provide some case studies that you've learned about in lesson. So not only do you provide information on the case study that's in the exam paper, but you also then provide some from what you've learned in class. Okay? Now, part 2 of section A of paper 1 is the one that awards lots of marks. And the way it begins is, at the top here, it asks you about your active citizenship investigation, which is basically your citizenship project that you should have done. And the first question is, state what your investigation is about. It awards no marks, but it's really important you fill that in because your examiner was not there when you were doing your citizenship investigation. So it's important you write that down to give them a bit of context. It means that when they're reading through your answer, they know what your issue was about in the first place. Okay? So, when you're filling in that first bit that you don't get awarded any marks for, don't just write racism. Okay? Make it really specific. Were you looking at racism in the UK? Were you looking at racism in school? Racism across the world? Racism in, I don't know, the police force? You've got to make it really specific, okay? So just be wary of that. Just make sure it's not just like a broad issue, but just more specific. You can even mention whether it's a local issue or global or national. Don't spend ages on it though, because you don't get any marks for it. Then it moves on to a 2-mark question, which is question 2.1. And you're basically asked questions about your project. So this is your time to shine. This is your time to show off. Examiner wasn't there, okay? So firstly, you need to make sure you have revised over all of your notes that you've taken from your project. So look at your primary research, your secondary research, draw out quotes and information, statistics, the names of articles that you used, who you interviewed for your primary research or who you surveyed, and draw key information out, okay, and revise those quotes and statistics, okay? Revise quotes and statistics from your PowerPoint presentation that you might have delivered to a class, or a meeting you might have had, and the minutes from the meeting, and sort of, what the discussion notes that you might have had. Revise some of the comments that were made. Think back to when you worked as a group, like, were there any challenges you faced? How did you overcome it? How did you decide who does what? How did you divvy up the roles and responsibilities? And write notes on that, okay? Revise that. Also, a crucial point is the evaluation stage, where you looked at all your actions that you did and discussed whether it was successful and to what extent it was successful. So you need to know what your aims were for the actual project. What did you want to achieve? What did you end up achieving at the end? Why? Okay. Have you got surveys to show that you did achieve what you intended to achieve? What does that show you? Draw out those statistics again. Draw out those quotes. It does not matter if you did not reach your aims. You don't lose marks for that. Okay, as long as you can evaluate it and say, actually, we didn't reach our aims because of X, Y, and Z. We could have done this, or we did try and do this, but it didn't work. We could have done. If I had more time, I'd do X, Y, and Z. So, just really go and look at all your notes and take quotes and stats and information and refresh your memory on it, because this part of the paper can really bump up your grade. Because you've done the work, you've done it, and you know it, and you need to now relay it to the examiner. Remember, the examiner is basically an alien. They have not witnessed anything that you've done. So you need to make sure you are giving them a lot of information, because you've done it. So why not? Why not show off? What I would say, though, is I have come across papers where students have made some really unrealistic claims that are clearly inaccurate. Okay, so just be aware that you can't say something like, oh yeah, we did a project on racism and eradicated racism entirely in our local borough, or we did, we raised awareness about climate change, and it meant that the country had, we're recycling more because of our, because of the awareness we raised in our school. Be realistic and be honest, okay? Because examiners will be able to tell. And again, you don't lose marks if your project wasn't what you aimed for it to be, but as long as you can critique it and evaluate why you didn't reach those aims and how you could have. And you'll be asked questions like, for example, in this paper, it says, explain how you use secondary research to decide on your active citizenship topic. That's a 2-mark question. Discuss how you carried out your initial research. That's the 4-mark question. Summarize the impact of your action. That's the 6-mark question. And then the 12-mark question, analyze how effective your plan was for your citizenship action. And a little tip on the 12-mark question, because there's a 2-mark, 2.1 is a 2-mark, 2.2 is a 4-mark with no source, 2.3 is a 6-mark, 2.4 is a 12-mark. Now, tips for the 12-mark question, you've got bullet points. You always have bullet points. Make sure you refer to every single one. The more evidence, more stats, more quotes you provide, the better you do. The more you can evaluate and pull apart those quotes and points, even better. And this could really, if you do really well in this section, it can really impact on your final grade, okay? Right, let's move on to section B. Section B is all the politics stuff. It's the content. It is the content. So this is all the stuff you've learned about Parliament, government, voting, political parties, devolution, voting systems, local government, everything you've learned in terms of content will come up here, okay? And the way in which it's structured is You've got question 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay. Question 3.1 is a 1-mark question. Question 3.2 is a 2-mark question. Question 3.3 is a 4-mark question with a source. And it's exactly the same structure for the question 4 and question 5. Question 6 and 7 are structured differently. Okay. Question 6.1 is a 1-mark question. 6.2 is an 8-mark question. And that's the same for question 7. So 7.1, 1 mark, 7.2, 8 mark. No source for the 8-mark questions, okay? The only 8-mark question with a source is in section A, under the active citizenship heading. A note on 4-mark questions with sources, you need to refer to the source, okay? 4-mark question expects you to give 2 points and 2 pieces of explanation, 2 explanations along with those points. You need to refer to the source, unless the source specifically says do not refer to the source. If the source does not say anything about referring to the source, assume that you need to refer to the source, okay? Because if you don't, you will be capped to 2 marks out of 4, even if you write the most brilliant response. Don't just copy chunks of information from the source. Pull out key bits of information to support your explanation, okay, or to support your point. Don't just say this answer because, and then pull out a quote without no real explanation. Like, you got to explain it, and then you've got to use the source as part of your explanation. Okay. Right. Let's move on to paper 2. This one's paper 2. Okay. So paper 2. Paper 2 begins with life in modern Britain. Okay, that's section A. That is all of the stuff about multiple identities, multiculturalism, British values, the United Nations, NATO, all the other international organisations. It's also about the media, the role of the media, how they hold government to account. There are certain topics that come up in both papers. So British values come up in both papers. So just bear that in mind, that you might have questions on the British values in paper 2 as well as in paper 1. Trade unions come up in both papers. So just bear that in mind, that you might spot both of them in each paper. As I was saying, life in modern Britain also covers the media, etc. Accountability of decision makers through the media, abuse of power of the media, etc. Okay, so lots of topics in life in modern Britain. It's quite a broad range of topics there, and the way in which it's structured is you've got 5 questions. You've got question 1.1, which is a 1-mark question. Question 1.2, 2-mark question. Question 1.3 is a 4-mark question, source based. Again, same rules apply for the 4-mark questions that are source based. Question 2, structured in exactly the same way. So 2.1 is a 1-mark, 2.2 is a 2-mark, 2.3 is a 4-mark. Question 3 is the one that's slightly different to the other 2, because you have question 3.1 is a 1-mark, question 3.2 is another 1-mark, question 3.3 is a 2-mark, and then question 4.4 is a 4-mark source-based question. Okay? And then you've got question 4 and 5, and they are question 4.1, 1-mark, question 4.2, 8-mark. Again, 8-mark questions, no sources. Okay, the only source-based 8-mark question you get is in section A, paper 1. So in section A of paper 2, there are 2 8-mark questions, okay, that you're expected to answer. The same way that in section B of paper 1, there are 2 8-mark questions, okay? Right, moving on. Section B, rights and responsibilities on paper 2. So rights and responsibilities, paper 2 covers all sorts of stuff. It covers the criminal justice system, the court system, the role of judges and judiciary, the Crown Prosecution Service, police, but it also covers human rights, legal rights, the evolution of human rights, the European Convention, Court of Human Rights, etc., etc. And there's questions 6 to 10. Covered in exactly, structured in exactly the same way as questions 1 to 5 in section 8. So 6.1, 1 mark, 6.2, 2 marks, 6.3, 4 marks, source-based, okay? It's exactly the same as question 7. Question 8 is similar to question 3 in section A, so it's a 1 mark, 2, and then source-based 4. Then question 9 is a 1 mark, question 8, it's a 1 mark and then an 8 mark, and then you've got question 10.1, which is 1 mark, question 10.2, which is 8 marks. So in paper 2, you have 4 8-mark questions. 2 in section A, 2 in section B, okay? You have 6 4-mark source-based questions. 3 in section A, 3 in section B, okay? With paper 1, you have, with section A, you have 1 8-mark question with a source. You have 1 12-mark question with without a source, but it's your own project. You have a 4-mark question and a 6-mark question based on your project. But in section B, you have 3 source-based 4-mark questions and 2 8-mark questions without a source. So section B of paper 1 and paper 2, section A and B are quite similar in structure, whereas paper 1, section A is the one that is, the structure is completely different because you're being asked about your citizenship investigation. So I hope that makes sense. Oh, I forgot to add, actually, in paper 1, section A, bear in mind that you are asked about how you can be a part of the, how you can be involved in the political system. So all about, boycotts, how you can, what's a petition to do. So things like that you can do to be involved in the political system and the political process, but also the legal process. So you might think of the legal stuff as being rights and responsibilities for paper 2, but remember to revise stuff like jury service, witnesses, how witnesses are used in courts, magistrates, because those could come up in section A, paper 1. For example, there's a question here that says, citizens can have different roles in trials. Explain one difference between the role of a witness and that of a member of the jury. Okay, so usually people would revise that for paper 2, rights and responsibilities, but it comes up section A, paper 1, because it's citizens' role in the legal system and the political system, okay? So just bear that in mind. As for me, I think I'm pretty much done. All done. This one's been a bit of a longer video just because I've gone through both papers and given you a bit of a breakdown there. So feel free to pause the video when you need to and rewind and take notes and so on. And please leave me comments to let me know what you'd like me to do a video on next.